Hello, viewers of Digital Movement 22. Today, we are welcoming a very esteemed person who has brought about immense change within the field of conservation and architecture of India. That's Abha Narain Lambah. So, to briefly introduce her, Abha ma'am is a Mumbai based conservation architect who has won numerous awards for her works across the country, including an award of merit from UNESCO. She's worked on many World Heritage sites like Ajanta Caves, Golconda Fort, and a number of Mumbai's Victorian buildings. So, hello, ma'am. It's a pleasure to have you here. And I really can't express how happy I am. So, as a student who's interviewing you, so I'm really glad to have this conversation. And I hope this interview goes well for both of us and our viewers thoroughly enjoy it. So, I'll begin with asking you, ma'am. You've been in the field for more than 2 decades now and have gained much experience from it. Was there any defining moment in your early years that made you realize that this is what you want to pursue in life?
Well, I'd studied architecture, and I was, more interested in urban issues, and especially the case of Delhi's urban villages, which had a lot of medieval monuments within them, and that was my thesis. So one thing led to the other, and I just realized that this is an area where there is very little thought and very little planning, and I think that is what led me to address such issues.
Okay. So so this was basically you just explored a lot and you got into this field by getting experience by getting influenced by the buildings over there. So you must have gone through Delhi a lot. You must have traveled a lot, right?
I think around, I mean, if you are, whether you're studying or growing up in any urban environment in India, whether, you grew up in a small town in UP or Delhi or Rajasthan, pretty much we are all surrounded by fantastic heritage. And unfortunately, a lot of it is in a very sad state of affairs, whether it is the condition of the building or the urban decay around these historic buildings. So I don't think you really even need to go out and travel outside your area. I'm sure for most of us, we see heritage. We don't observe it in the way maybe we should, because there's a lot of apathy. There are, if you are in a city like Delhi, there, around the corner, there are beautiful tombs of the Lodi period. There are Baudis. There are, vestiges of Mughal architecture. There's so much heritage. Almost every neighborhood and colony has some uh, 15th century or 14th century monument, and the 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 way that we have developed as cities and the kind of the urban chaos that we see around our historic buildings is something that needs to be addressed. And I think each one of us can start, if nothing else, raising concern, writing about such things. Today there's social media, even posting pictures of the kind of desolation that these monuments have, and sometimes if one is heard, and some action can be taken accordingly.
I certainly agree with that point because there's a lot of trend of actually using social media to spread the word, and it's actually a much more easy way to create an interest field base on this. So yeah, that's a really good point. So the next question is basically, so Abha Narayan Lambah Associates has worked on so many projects over the years. What are some of the challenges and hurdles that you had to overcome during the early years, and how have these strategies actually changed with time?
I think one of the challenges, definitely in the initial phase when I started, around 95, 96, was a complete absence of either any legislative protection to heritage buildings, or a complete absence of funding. And coupled with an apathy that we have, as a nation towards a lot of our heritage. So over time, I wouldn't say things have, drastically transformed, but one has been doing what is possible at one's own level, at either raising awareness or targeting projects that could become pilots for other areas to follow through, or doing some critical interventions within the heritage fabric or within cities. So we begin to start seeing heritage and historic buildings as an asset rather than a liability. So if you're able to adaptively reuse a building or to restore a building and put it back into the urban milieu as a vital cultural and urban asset, be it the restoration of the Royal Opera House, which is now actively used, or even restoring what are termed earlier as sarkari buildings, but then making them look good and restoring the heritage, which one has been trying with the municipal head office in Mumbai and the Maharashtra State Police headquarters and so many others. And I think this can have a trickle down effect, because in every small district there is a collector's office, which tends to be an old bungalow or an old building that's been restored. So even if within our areas of wherever we are operating as architects, I feel the architectural community can really do a lot.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you, because as a person who's residing in Aligarh at the moment, I've seen a lot of buildings that are just left unattended. So, and there's a lot of government buildings, there's a lot of university buildings. So, get your point, because it's literally in every corner. We just fail to see it. So, that's a really good point. And I'll just move on to the next one. So you're extremely skilled and experienced when it comes to conservation of a building. Like one can see in your projects, like you mentioned right now, the Royal Opera House in Mumbai, or one of your favorite projects that you often mention in interviews, like the Maitreya Buddha Temple in Ladakh. So one could say that you're taking these buildings from the past, restoring it, and making it timeless and functional as well. So how do you describe the process of integrating modern functionality into a building, all the while maintaining its original charm?
Let's face it, every building cannot just become a monument that people come, peep in, and then leave at 5 o'clock. We have to, if to make it sustainable, and especially conservation as a phenomena, if it has to be really grassroots level, we need to be able to look at how historic buildings and heritage buildings can be integrated into the everyday life of citizens. And that is why, I mean, especially a lot of my work has revolved around places that are historical, but where there is engagement with the stakeholders and local citizens. So, in the case of the Maitreya Buddha temple, it was the villagers who were responsible for raising funds, for restoring the building, bringing in materials, whether it was branches of willow or carrying mud blocks up the hill. In a very different way, but still very similar. You have the case of Mumbai, where we've recently worked on restoring Baikala Station, which is India's oldest railway station. And to restore it, we did not look at government funds, but my firm, we gave our expertise pro bono. We brought in Bajaj Foundation to give corporate funds to the restoration of a historic building, and a local NGO, I Love Mumbai, helped in that. My point being that when a historic building is actively used, whether it is a railway station or an old library, and it can be restored sensitively, what it does is actually extend the life of that structure, but also extend its impact and its usefulness, and therefore its relevance to the present day society. And that is very important, because heritage buildings need to continue to be relevant. Only then will they be looked after, because very few monuments can just be sealed off, and they're just barely 3,900 structures that are under central government protection. But what about all those others, millions and millions of historic buildings that we see across our small towns, our villages, our cities? To be able to keep them relevant, we need to continuously have some sort of engagement, whether they can be used as libraries, or whether the offices or government structures, post offices, and other such buildings can just be sensitively restored, so that when you go to use that building for its administrative use, you can also admire the beauty of the architecture.
I get your point. That's a really good notion. And that's a really fantastic answer, actually. Just answered all the elements of the question. So I'll just move on quickly to the next question as well. Since I'm a student and currently in my final year, and also a young member of Digital Movement 22. I've noticed that students who choose the field of conservation and architecture, though they're comparatively less, but are immensely dedicated towards making this as their niche. So, what is your message that you would like to convey to them as they begin their journey, relating to how you began it?
I think if you're passionate about what you're doing, if you really truly believe that, I feel architects become architects not because they want to make a lot of money. That's normally not the reason. As a student in first year, you join, an architecture course. If you wanted to, if making money was the only, you know, aim that you had, you'd normally do a Bachelor of Commerce or an MBA or something like that. Most students who choose architecture as their profession or their calling are really people who have a sensitivity and a sensibility of design, and somewhere they are, I would say, a large percentage of uh, our field really are people who are sensitive and who have some kind of a responsibility. They believe that they can actually make the world a better place. And so if you're one of those who shares either one of these three qualities, what is really important is to know that you as an architect have a responsibility, because it's the most, you could be doing somebody's individual home, which might just impact that family, but the structure that you're putting on an urban landscape, whether it is in a city or a town, affects the public psyche and the public realm of a complete community. So if you put up a bad looking structure, it just becomes an eyesore, and the person who's walking past it, whether it is a milkman or the a person who's going for a walk, does see it. It does affect in some subliminal way their public realm. So whether you're building a new building, I think there needs to be far more a sense of responsibility, that it's not just the client who you owe that sense of design to. It is that urban environment, that city. You owe something to the city where you're planting your building. And if it's a beautiful building, it gives joy to many more. If it's a hideous building, in the morning, I pass some building and I say, "Oof, kya tabahi hai!" Like, what a terrible, ugly structure has been built. Similarly, if you as a conservation architect can even make sure that one building was saved from being destroyed and put to some sort of relevant use, and in some sort of sensitive, sympathetic manner that is not jarring, or if you're building a new structure next to in a historic setting, your architecture should not just be all about me, but it should be, how am I responding to the urban context? So if you are able to be contextual, if you're able to be sensitive as an architect, I think that is half the battle won. You can always then equip yourself with tools of education and understanding of the intricacies and the techniques. But the starting point is really, do you want to make a positive difference?
Okay. So, speaking actually, considering one point which you just spoke, that is the sense of responsibility that we have towards it. At the present moment, if we actually look into architecture, most of our work is we designed without even taking some of the most basic important elements into considerations, like a sense of belonging, even. So, because of which we make today, it's actually we consider the point that what we make today creates an everlasting impression of what the future might perceive us as. So, do you think that restoration and heritage conservation can help in repairing this dynamic people-place relationship which we have with our social spaces?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the very fundamental aspects of a city is its sense of identity.
Mhm.
I remember as a child, if I visited Lucknow, I would look out, even as a child, what would strike me are the beautiful colonnaded sort of buildings, the bungalows, the architecture of Kaisar, the buildings around Kaisar Bagh, and then you would go somewhere and there would be particular food which was very specific, or particular kind of kebab, or if you pulled out chicken. So all these are just not, if you realize that a city is built by a sum total of all such experiences. So the culinary heritage of a city, the textile heritage of a city, the craft heritage of the city, the architectural heritage of the city, together make that the whole city of Lucknow. The same can be said for Banaras, for Jaunpur, for so many other cities across India. The trouble is, over the last few years, we have been letting go of this architectural quality, of even the very fact that if you went to Ladakh, you would see mud architecture. If you went to Punjab, you would see bricks. And over the last 20 years, there's been a rapid loss of the local contextual architecture. And this has been replaced by glass facades and Alico bond structures, which have absolutely neither context nor root nor material or sustainability. And worse, they have no link with the identity of that city. So, what we have been doing in this kind of a bhed chal to suddenly emulate the West and look like Dubai, we've converted build cities that had great character into these faceless, nameless, anonymous masses. So that is what we've already lost. And I think my generation is responsible for this kind of utter, madness of just poorly designed cut paste architecture that we have seen now ruin our cities. But whatever is left of it, if we are able to at least save that, be able to restore that, open up cafes in historic building, restore them to be put to public use or for whatever use. Wouldn't you rather go and stay in a hotel which was in a beautiful old Haveli, restored beautifully, versus go to a modern looking hotel with a glass and aluminum facade? Would you rather want to eat the same sandwich in Lucknow, or try out the local cuisine? So we don't realize, but for tourism, for even visitors, and for definitely for the citizens of a city, being able to save these various heritages, whether it is the food heritage or the craft heritage of a city, really plays a role in the larger growth of a city and its identity and its future trajectory.
Completely agree with you on this point, because the thing is, we've actually, India is, if you look from a perception, from a foreigner's perception, they actually look at India for their culture, which is rich in, buildings or architecture. Even if you look at the even smallest thing, even our cuisine is so different. It actually, it actually appeals to them. So I actually agree with you on this point, and it's a little frustrating when you walk down the street and you see a lot of these unkept buildings, and you see, then even if we are using modern material in buildings, we can see that even we're not able to even maintain that as well. So everything at the end just looks like a mess, if I would say. So
So
yeah,
I'm
we can
hoping
just.
your generation is more aware, is more sensitive. I'm hoping that in your generation, if you get a project where the client tells you, "Oh, I have an old building, just knock it down and build a structure," I hope you'll be able to convince them and talk to them about how the greenest building is one which already exists. How about recycling it, adapting it, restoring it, and I hope the new buildings that you build look at the urban scale, the massing, and take into account what impact your building has on the larger urban realm.
Yeah, we should be having this kind of, let's say, stubborn attitude to, because we need to actually preserve it. And I actually really appreciate talking about this with you, because I followed you and I saw one of the famous incidents, about this Mumbai Heritage Street, that you were so adamant on actually getting the billboards over there changed so that the facade of the buildings was not covered. So I actually read about this, I actually heard you speaking about it. So that was one of a really appreciable moment, which, it's a really good thing to hear. So so we've had a lot of serious talk right now. So let's lighten it up a bit, and I'll just ask you some final questions. So what are some of the leisure habits that you have developed over the years that help you, rejuvenate or make you more determined towards moving forward?
So I love to travel, and because in my work I do need to travel a lot, it's now I sort of combine the two. And if I go for work, I also try and explore particular facet of the area that I'm going to. I do love to read, and I'm a major foodie, so I love to explore new food and cuisines wherever I go.
So, any specific cuisine that you absolutely love apart from Indian, because Indian is really good.
Well, I would say there is no one. The beauty of Indian cuisine is that it has so many variations. So, even within a state, you can go to different parts of a state and enjoy different cuisines. Each region has its own cuisine, and that's something I enjoy.
Yeah, that's good. So, let's just end with one final question. So you've had an eventful career, thoroughly enjoying every moment of your every project that you took. So what are the future hopes and endeavors that you aim to conquer now?
Well, I hope that the projects that we're right now in the middle of some projects that are new build but within a historic setting, and I hope we'd be able to when they are completed, we'd be putting together a different at least a different ideology of how to do new build in historic towns. Beyond that, I think I hope we can, as Indian conservation architects, be also, taken more seriously across the world and around the globe, because for so many years, we've had these international experts who've flown down and given us sort of gyan on conservation. And I hope that there comes a time when there are international projects, they call in Indian experts.
That'll be a really proud moment for you then if you do get included in that. And
Absolutely.
I'll look forward to it though. So we've actually reached the end of our conversation, ma'am. And I really thank you for taking out time from your busy schedule. I mean, it's a weekend as well. So really and we really appreciate that from Digital Movement 22. And also thank you to the viewers watching this. Hope you all had a good time and thank you.
Thank you, Mariam.
Okay, ma'am.